Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're unpacking a really fascinating contradiction, the paradox of the Korean workday, specifically the grind versus the gastronomy. You know, South Korea is globally famous for its absolute powerhouse economy, and frankly, its grueling corporate working hours. But right alongside that intense grind exists this beautiful, deeply respected, uncompromising food culture. So, how exactly do these two totally opposite worlds coexist? Let's get right into it. Okay, let's dive into this with a number that really sets the stage for us 1,901. According to the data we pulled from the OECD, that is the staggering average amount of time a South Korean worker spends on the clock every single year. Now, it's super easy to just look at 1,901 hours and see, another sterile data point, but I want you to really think about what this actually means for a real person's everyday reality. This isn't just a simple statistic. We're talking about early mornings, really late nights, a barrage of weekend emails, and a corporate culture that historically equates physical presence at your desk with deep, unwavering dedication. To truly grasp the gravity of that number, we've got to zoom out and look at the global context. When we map South Korea's massive annual working hours against the standard OECD average, which sits way down around 1752 hours, the difference is huge. And just for a really stark contrast, let's throw in a lower hour nation like Germany, coming in at just over 1,300 hours. The gap between those figures is absolutely wild. You can realize right away just how much more of a Korean worker's actual, literal lifespan is dedicated to their employer compared to their peers in Europe or really even the broader global average. It absolutely sets the stage for a culture of undeniable heavy fatigue. Now, what's really interesting about this next point is the legal framework behind all those massive numbers. The Korean Ministry of Employment and Labor, or MOEL for short, sets the standard work week at 40 hours. Sounds pretty normal, right? But when you look at the maximum permitted hours with overtime, it stretches all the way up to 52 hours per week. And honestly, historically, before some recent reforms, that cap was even higher. So the legal reality perfectly mirrors that massive OECD data we just discussed. We're looking at a systemic, legally permitted structure that allows for, and frankly often expects, some incredibly long weeks. So the obvious question is, how on earth do workers survive this without completely burning out? Well, that brings us to the culinary contrast, leaving the desk for the dining table. Here in the West, we're all too familiar with the dreaded sad desk sandwich. You know the drill, eating a cold wrap with one hand while furiously typing out an email with the other. But in Korea, despite that crushing workload we just talked about, lunch is deeply, deeply revered. It's not an afterthought, it is an event, and it literally demands your full attention.
To really understand why, let's look at the official Visit Korea definition of banchan. Banchan refers to the essential multi-dish array of sides served with a meal. And listen, we aren't talking about a sad little side salad here. We are talking about a highly structured, elaborate spread of fermented vegetables, seasoned roots, pan-fried delicacies, and braised meats. And this brilliantly illustrates our core theme today. A proper traditional Korean meal requires structure, and above all else, it requires time. You simply cannot eat an intricate array of banchan with one hand while staring at a spreadsheet. Food here is the ultimate cultural priority, and it demands a total, uncompromising pause in the day.
Building on that data from Visit Korea, there are these totally non-negotiable structural elements to this daily ritual. A proper meal has to consist of bap, which is your bowl of rice, guk, your hot soup, your diverse spread of banchan, and a massive emphasis on communal sharing. It's almost always a shared experience with your colleagues. It's inherently unhurried. It's complex. You're navigating all these different flavors, sharing stews right from the center of the table, and actively engaging with both the food and the people around you. It's this incredibly immersive sensory experience dropped right into the middle of a wildly demanding workday. So, the crucial point is that we have this massive cognitive dissonance going on. On one hand, you've got the corporate grind. It's fast-paced, high-stress, long hours governed by those MOEL guidelines. But on the exact opposite hand, you have the traditional lunch. It's slow, elaborate, and deeply respected. How can a society demand both of these things at once? How can a workforce driven by such extreme, hyper-fast productivity also preserve a slow, elaborate midday ritual? I mean, they seem like totally incompatible truths, right? But the secret actually lies in how the Korean legal system steps in to force a truce between these two worlds. And that's exactly where worlds collide, through the law of the lunch break. You see, the Korean government absolutely knows that without some hard legal protection, the corporate grind would swallow this vital culinary tradition completely whole. So the Ministry of Employment and Labor doesn't just regulate how long you can work, they actually step in to legally mandate and protect this cultural necessity. They make absolutely sure that, amidst all that heavy workload, the lunch hour remains sacred ground. Let's break down exactly how Moel regulates this, because it's fascinating. This is a strict legal mandate. If you work a 4-hour shift, you are legally entitled to a minimum 30-minute break. If you work an 8-hour shift, you are legally mandated to receive a minimum 1-hour break. And here is the absolutely crucial detail. It must be given during working hours. You can't just tack it on to the end of the day so you can leave an hour early. No way. This isn't just some nice little corporate perk cooked up by HR. It's a fierce, legally protected institution. The law is literally acting as a shield for the Korean lunch, ensuring that workers have the actual time required to sit down to their soup, their rice, and their banchan. Let's move to and see how this builds into an actual timeline of a human being's day. First, you've got your early morning clock in, which brings immediate pressure and stress. But then, right smack in the middle, you have that protected moat of time, the mandated lunch hour. After that hour is up, boom, it's right back into the intense afternoon grind, which is very often followed by a late clock out well into the evening. By mapping both the legal breaks and the long hours onto a single day like this, you can really understand how the traditional meal serves as this vital oasis in the middle of a very long, very demanding marathon. And that really brings us to the why behind all of this. As the data suggests, in Korea's high-pressure work environment, taking the time for a proper, structured meal isn't a luxury. It's an absolute necessary release valve for workplace pressure. When you look back at that massive 1901-hour OECD figure, you realize pretty quickly that people would simply break without this. The elaborate, unhurried nature of the food culture provides an essential emotional and physical reset. It literally forces workers to stop, breathe, eat well, and connect with their peers before stepping back into the fray. So, the big takeaway from all of this is how South Korea manages to balance extreme productivity with deep cultural preservation. Those strict Moel labor policies we talked about, they don't just cap the work week, they actively protect the humanity right in the middle of it. By legally enforcing that midday rest, the state ensures that the country's rich, unhurried culinary traditions can survive even the most demanding, modernized, industrialized schedules. It really is an incredible compromise between the relentless demands of the global economy and the literal soul of a culture. Which leaves us with a final thought for you to ponder today. How do you maintain a rich culture when you are seemingly always working? And honestly, more importantly, for you watching, what can we learn from the Korean model about drawing a hard line in the sand to protect our own time to recharge? Are you actually taking your hour, or are you scarfing down a sad desk sandwich between meetings? Seriously, let that sink in next time you look at your calendar. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and I highly encourage you to take a hard look at how you protect your own release valves in your daily grind.